KPBS On Demand is supported by San Diego Congregations of the United Church of Christ, a community where Christmas is the story of a love greater than all that makes us despair. Learn more at SanDiegoUCC.org.
Hey there, San Diego. It's time for KPBS Roundtable. I'm Andrew Bracken. San Diego FC's memorable first-ever season came to an end last weekend after a 3-1 loss to Vancouver in the MLS Western Conference Final. But that doesn't tell the full story of San Diego's newest soccer team. We take a look back at SDFC's incredible first season and the role San Diego fans have played in the team finding success. Then, a recent report out of UC San Diego found a major jump in the number of students not meeting high school proficiency in math. What's behind the increase and what needs to change? That's ahead on KPBS Roundtable. San Diego FC's inaugural season has officially come to an end. Saturday's match against the Vancouver Whitecaps ended with a 3-1 loss. Looking back, it's safe to say that Major League Soccer's newest team played a historic season, setting records for wins and points for an expansion team, and setting some attendance records as well. Joining me now to talk more is Darren Smith. He's one of the radio voices for San Diego FC and host of the Section 1904 podcast. Hey, Darren, welcome to Roundtable.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. Appreciate the invite.
Also, Hector Trujillo is here. He's a soccer writer with the Times of San Diego and El Latino. Hector, welcome back.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with these two guys.
And finally, Tony Sanchez is co-founder of San Diego.Futbol, an online sports page covering San Diego soccer. Tony, welcome to you.
How's it going? Thank you for having me on once again. Appreciate it.
Well, thanks, everyone, for making time for us today. Darren, I hate to start with the bad piece here, but San Diego FC fell behind pretty quickly in that match Saturday. Tell us about the story of the match from your perspective.
I think the story of the match was just getting ambushed right out of the gate. I think objectively, not just the SDFC angle, was Vancouver a really good team. We're going to talk about some of the records that SDFC set this season. Vancouver was neck and neck with them the entire way. They had as many points as SDFC. They scored more goals. They allowed fewer goals. They're really good. This match was hosted by SDFC, even though they were level on points for the season because of a tie-breaking rule. And I think Vancouver just came out of the gates flying, and they found a couple of pressure points for SDFC, a little bit out of character. I would say, again, I don't think SDFC played its best match ever. But credit to Vancouver because, they found ways really, really early on to take advantage of SDFC to pin them back, something we haven't seen a ton of in 2025. And they scored a couple of goals. And then the third one, the backbreaker, just going into the half. And that was just too much to overcome for SDFC. So the match itself was a little bit of a disappointment. I don't think there's any shame in losing to a really good team like Vancouver, but I think everybody would like to have seen SDFC's best version of itself, and we didn't get that.
Tony, the score ended up being 3-1, as Darren mentioned there. A pair of those goals came really quick, really fast. What stood out to you about those opening minutes of the match?
It was Vancouver really studying the film and identifying where San Diego FC could potentially have some points of weakness or areas of focus that they just weren't able to really patch up. And that's one right back situation where they had a hospital of injuries in the right back position. A young kid in Ian Pilcher, a center back by trade, playing out of position and preferred left foot most of the time. You put them up against one of the best offensive attacks in the league, and that what they have to offer in that big a stage. It's a lot to ask from that situation, but obviously Vancouver did a fantastic job in managing and being lethal when they had the opportunities presented to themselves. It wasn't easy to dispossess San Diego FC, but it was equally as difficult to score off of that dispossession. And so those successes were really matched up, and San Diego FC just weren't able to respond, unfortunately, with quickness. And it took a Chucky Lozano in the second half to be able to bring the team back at least with one goal.
Hector, one striking moment, at least for me, came at the end of the match. SDFC fans, kind of stayed after, really serenading the team after the disappointing loss. And it even caught the attention of Vancouver star player Thomas Müller. And here's a little bit of how he reacted to the San Diego fans.
Mm-hmm.
But I also enjoy it, to be honest. Look at these pictures now. It's a defeat. It's a big defeat for San Diego, but that's why we play this sport. That's such an amazing atmosphere.
What jumps out to you about that reaction and the reaction of the fans after the match?
Yeah, just a fantastic moment, even though it was obviously a heartbreaking situation for the fans when the best player for the opposing team recognizes the efforts of the fan base, the supporters group. And like Tony and Darren was saying, it was just one of those situations where Cinderella hit midnight and the carriage turned into a pumpkin, whatever you want to think about it. They just went to prevent defense at the time. They're up 3-0. But it's good to see that level of passion. It's just not a bunch of bandwagoners, you can tell. And when the opposing team, the captain or one of the best players for the other side recognizes that, it's an unforgettable season, unforgettable moment. And obviously, you wanted to make the final. But in the end, it's going to be something that we're all going to remember.
Tony, you've been long enmeshed in San Diego and Tijuana's soccer fan culture. How have you seen that evolve over this first season from San Diego FC?
Yeah, it was a rocky boat to say the least. Even within the independent supporter union Frontera San Diego, it's just getting 7 different versions of what it means to be a supporter and have them all chanting and cheering for 90 minutes in one direction is a challenge in itself. And what was able to come out of it was something beautiful that united. It was that unilateral thread throughout all these people that were able to understand that this is beyond anything that's team related, any sort of crest. This is for the city. This is for San Diego. And a lot of these people were the ones that were in the middle of a catch-22 situation with Soccer City. And this is how they end up getting MLS here. And they're finally able to cheer for that highest level of soccer here in the United States. But to be able to see that, to be able to have the recognition from a Thomas Müller, who is from Germany, who has played in front of some of the most just fabled fan bases like Dortmund and their yellow wall to
and
get
in World
that
Cups,
praise.
right? Yeah.
And in World Cups, yeah, it's absolutely huge to be able to go ahead and have that recognition. And they are definitely still in the growing process. It's still year one, even for the supporters, not just for the team. It's still year one for a lot of these supporting groups.
Darren, Tony kind of mentioned there, Soccer City, some of the past, efforts we've seen to bring professional soccer, whether it's MLS, other teams, to San Diego. Let's talk about San Diego and some of the attendance records. They did kind of break a record at Snapdragon earlier. I think it was their home opener, right? They ended the season with several sellouts here. Tell us about the growth of the fan base and how you see that compared to years past. I mean, you've covered this sports scene here in San Diego a long time.
Yeah, I know. You mentioned Soccer City. I get some PTS from that. So, I haven't lived through some of these for sure.
That was a failed effort to bring a stadium here, right?
Yeah, don't remind me. I was footing McFooty-Face, the mascot, for a while, so don't remind me of those.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of split up a large portion of my radio audience at that time. But I mean, I think that the point about how popular this became, I think it was mostly assumed that was going to happen because it was new and because it was novel. And I will tie this back to the previous point, which was the fans that were serenading the squad before it left the field and Thomas Müller's reaction, because I think there's a lot of ways that you can measure success. Clearly, this was a success on the field with the wins and the points, and I'm sure it did well in business and ticket sales. But, one of the points that I was focused on all year was the fans. And, were the fans, as this thing picked up steam and as the bandwagon filled up, was this a club? Was this just a bunch of people that are attracted to it because of its success? To see the fans serenading the squad after an elimination, to me, was really an important moment because, we talk about success of a franchise, an expansion franchise, but we're also talking about a desire to be a club, like a real soccer club. And that's not just necessarily tied to wins. Being part of a soccer club is being there when things are good, and it's also being there when things aren't so good. And this was not such a great moment. But in terms of the tickets sold, I was shocked to see how quickly these playoff games were selling out, especially while we're sitting talking about ticket sales for other sports. To see games sold out in 48 hours, 72 hours, less than 24 hours for the Western Conference Final, to me, it was incredibly validating as somebody who would try to convince non-believers that pro soccer at the highest level would be an absolute hit in San Diego. So I loved everything about that, and I especially loved that moment. I do think that moment at the end of the season for what felt like 10, 15 minutes was just something that will carry the group and everybody who's been associated with this into the off season and into the second season for SDFC as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting, Darren. Tony, I'm wondering if you can, enlighten us a little bit what Darren was talking about in terms of like what an actual soccer club is versus just a team having a great season and the fans jumping on a bandwagon. Tony, what does a healthy soccer club look like, and what's giving you optimism that San Diego has found one?
It's the fact that people care, and you start seeing it leak out of the stadium into the community. With San Diego FC, it's not only, like Darren was saying, the marketing aspect, but yeah, you're going to see some MTS buses with the wrap of the club and whatnot, but you start seeing the jerseys in the community. You start going to grocery stores and different places, and you start seeing the SDFC branding, and you start seeing people wearing knockoff SDFC shirts. This is really kind of where that starts taking off, and it starts permutating through San Diego, and that's where soccer itself is what moves this forward. The game itself moves forward, regardless of the color, regardless of the name, regardless of whatever it is. It's a club that represents the people that are in that city. That name is attributed to San Diego. Anybody who identifies with that, whether it's 619-858-760, even 664 in TJ, like that can be a possibility here in this area. And for San Diego FC to be able to cement themselves and be a place where people want to be, where despite, parking is how much, it's okay. I need to be there. This need to be there moment just very much came to a critical boiling point here towards the end of the year. And it's something that a true club needs to also feel, the pain of loss. How awesome would it have been to have won it all and gone all the way for year one, but then after that, you don't know what it's like to lose. And then does that really signify a collapse? And well, you know what? Year two, they're just going to win. They lost, and viewership starts going down. Attendance starts going down. That's not what a true club means. It means you start building bonds, and next year, all these people have expectations now and want to go ahead and see San Diego succeed at the highest level.
Darren, one of the main reasons that I think, a lot of people point to for SDFC's success this season is its head coach, Coach Mikey Varas. You recently spoke to him on your podcast, and you asked him what it meant to, for him to hear such an outpouring of fan support after that match. And here's a little of what he told you.
Yeah, I get goosebumps right now thinking about it because, we were all down, because we're really competitive, and the fact that they lifted us up out of the ditch in that moment and just gave us something to dream about, which is getting back on the field sooner rather than later and getting back to competing for them. It was really important, and I think it's a perfect example of being with us in las buenas y en las malas, and sometimes being the ones who have to lead us.
Darren, what else did he have to say about the season and reflecting back on your conversation with him?
Yeah, I love what he said. It just raises the hair on my arms hearing him say that, and how beautifully I'm so envious of him and our other panelists here with being bilingual, that he says in the good and the bad. I think he talked about how, he felt like it was the honor of a lifetime to be associated with something. Those are his words, not mine. He felt like it was the honor of a lifetime to lead this group in season number one. And, I think that means something to me, who's somebody who's been around here for a long time. And, Tony and Hector have been around here ever longer than I have. I think that really mattered. That resonates with people, that he was feeling the pain and he was being open and he was being honest. And I also thought he said something interesting, because he's always telling us about having a growth mindset. And, not just as a football coach, as a soccer coach, but as a human, about what that means. And I thought he allowed us in a little bit. He said, hey, a year ago, like, everybody would have said, who is this guy? Why is he the one who's being picked to lead this team? And he allowed us a moment where he talked about his own success and said, there were things that I felt like I also needed to prove. I've never been a first-team manager before in my life. So people were right to have questions, and now it's, what are we going to do getting set for season number 2? But, you could tell, like, it was still nobody was ready to sit and try to put this in perspective about how special the season was. They were still feeling the pain, but they also were buoyed by the support and getting ready for season number 2.
I mean, Hector, what was your first impression of Coach Mikey Varas? As Darren mentioned there, it wasn't just like a done deal, like slam dunk. Everybody thought, he'd hit it out of the park, right?
No, yeah. And in that sense, I think I was here last time when I told you I'd be shocked if he didn't win Coach of the Year, which for some reason he didn't. And I'm still in shock because of that. I mean, the other 2 coaches were very deserving of being nominated, but Philadelphia Union, they have a track record of success already, and the coaches for Vancouver. But I mean, Mikey Varas is one of those guys that the emotion is there, but he's honest. He's not cut and paste. He's not a corporate guy that's going to tell you what he thinks the media wants to hear. I mean, we talked about the controversies at the beginning of the season with the fans and the team and all that. He was really up to the moment and no nonsense kind of guy. He told him what he felt, and he told the community what he expects from them and what the team expects from them, and they followed suit. And from this moment on, I think, even though we talked about a second ago, it didn't end the way we wanted to in the final, but I think him and the culture that he's brought into the team and into the city is going to prolong and continue on for years and years and years.
And those early season issues you mentioned kind of related to some fan chants, some fan behavior that he was pretty verbally kind of came out against pretty early.
Yeah, and you could tell from the post-game conference the moment he wasn't scripted, he wasn't told anything from the GM or the ownership to say this or that if this question popped up. He felt it. He said it. You could tell. I call him Miguelito all the time because he reminds me of my cousin. He's one of those guys that's really down to earth, relatable for the masses, for the people. And he just told what he felt at that very moment. He was disappointed, and the fans, the supporter group, listened. And from then on, it's been all positive, I think, in terms of the fan support.
Darren, you mentioned this, growth mindset that you've taken from Coach Varas. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about that. I mean, coaching, there is the X's and O's, there's the technical, tactical side, but there's much more. There's leadership, right? Tell us more about what you've, gleaned from him, from your conversations with him over the season.
Oh, yeah. I mean, listen, I sit around my kitchen table and I talk about the stuff with my wife, not to be weird about it, but about, making sure that we're continuing to grow as individuals and as a couple. But as it relates to SDFC, part of their approach is that they are playing younger players, and younger players who are in their first year, whether it's Ian Pilcher, Manu Dua, they're also playing teenagers. Some of these guys are 18, turn 19 during the season. And so you have to have that growth mindset, and not just the cliche of, hey, you're always learning and you're always getting better in sports. These guys are going to make mistakes. And when Mikey talks about being willing to grow, it is about don't be afraid to make mistakes. I can live with you making the mistakes. What I cannot live with is you, A, not learning from your mistakes, and B, not being willing to make them. Those are the areas where your growth mindset has stopped. You are fearful, you are scared, and you cannot play that way. You have to be brave, and you have to play a certain style, and you have to have a level of conviction to you. And I think it really applies. Again, I could take this and turn this into all sorts of stuff away from the pitch, but as it relates to the soccer club, it is really specific to the younger players on the squad, making sure that they understand he will live with your mistakes, but he will not tolerate you being unwilling to make them or not learning from them. And we've seen examples of that as the season went on.
Tony, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about this, depending on sort of these younger players, how did you see that show up, and what stands out to you? How has that led to their success this season?
Well, it all goes down to the nature of this club and the root of it being a right to dream club, which means that it's part of a larger academy in Egypt, Ghana, and over in Denmark. And so there's this network of almost like charter schools for soccer specifically. And so San Diego now has that. And it's almost like a blueprint now that San Diego FC has to be able to follow what success looks like in soccer, not necessarily success in MLS, because that's what San Diego FC is trying to navigate and discover. And so with that, the flagship mindset is they're going to play young. They're going to play young players and give them opportunities to get better looks and the best opportunities to go ahead and move on to potentially a bigger club or be as successful as they can within that same club. And that's on year one difficult to do because you really can't mine MLS quality players out the gate from San Diego. So you have to go ahead and look into different avenues that MLS offers, whether that's the college super draft, or that's the expansion draft. But it all goes back to what sporting director Tyler Heaps was able to do in his scouting, in his experience through Monaco AS and different European clubs that are that same way. They looked at these players and looked at the strengths of what they can offer. And whether you believe it may be a more bespoke approach to soccer, which is just a plug and play. Is this player able to fill in this place? Go ahead and plug and play him. He can play multiple positions. And they were successful by finding the talent to be able to step up into those positions with players like Manuel Dua, Ian Pilcher, Bombino, and a slew of others that, came in as loans and did their job and their role really well.
And we're going to talk more about the players in just a moment. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation about San Diego FC and take a look at what's to come next season. This is KPBS Roundtable. You're listening to KPBS Roundtable. I'm Andrew Bracken. We're continuing our conversation on San Diego FC and its inaugural season that just came to an end. I'm joined by San Diego FC radio voice Darren Smith, soccer writer Hector Trujillo, and San Diego.futbol's Tony Sanchez. Tony, I want to turn to talk a little bit more about some of the players that led to the team's success this season. And I've got to start with Anders Dreyer. Tell us about him and, what impression he's made on you this season.
Yeah, for the break, we're talking about great moves by Tyler Heaps, the sporting director. This is probably the coup de grace here, the beautiful moment that he does in getting this piece of negotiation of Anders Dreyer from Anderlecht over in Europe. And the bit of business, the boring part is it was a great maneuver. But what he was able to do in this league is really turn heads and really put that focus on San Diego FC, where everybody thought it was going to be the other designated player, Chucky Lozano. It ended up being on the field, Anders Dreyer, the Danish national, who from the get-go really cemented himself as being the leader on with the style of play that he was able to do. And it's a player that was able to contribute incredibly through the season. And anytime Anders Dreyer scored in this season, they went undefeated. And so having such a tally attached to the name as a player, that's why he wears number 10. And 10 is almost sacred in the soccer world. That's your talisman. That's the player. If he is doing everything right, you're going to go ahead and have a great time in a great game. And even when your team is struggling, that's still the focal point. That's still the ray of sunshine that pierces through the clouds and is able to make something out of nothing. And so Anders Dreyer was absolutely huge. And it was one of those things where you measure the level of the volume at Snapdragon Stadium during player introduction. Then it always was Chucky Lozano, Irving Lozano getting the biggest cheers. But towards the end, you got that bigger and bigger and bigger pop for what people consider here in San Diego to be the MVP, the true MVP of MLS, Anders Dreyer.
And he won the 2025 MLS Newcomer of the Year award as well, right? So, Hector, Tony mentioned the other kind of major, headliner of SDFC, and that's Irving Chucky Lozano. Tell us about his season. He scored the only goal for SDFC in that playoff loss, but he's had some ups and downs this season. What has the season been like?
Yeah, a little bit of a roller coaster. That's been his career when he started off with Pachuca and Liga MX, then he went to Europe. But he's been a champion everywhere he's gone, Mexico, Europe, and hopefully if he stays with San Diego FC. He had dealt with some injuries early on the season. He was out for a few weeks. We were worried he got re-aggravated in the recent Mexico friendly, but he turned out to be okay. Like you said, he scored the goal for SDFC in the playoff. A little bit of a controversy there as to why he wasn't a part of the first game against Portland in the playoffs, as to his, I wouldn't say attitude, but his demeanor towards Miguelito in terms of being substituted in the game against Houston at halftime. But that turned out to be okay because we got to see Amal Pellegrino come up and make some great plays throughout the season and especially in the playoffs. So for Chucky Lozano, you get what you get with him. He's a package deal, the passion, the fire, kind of like we said with Mike Ibarras. He's not going to hide anything, and sometimes that overwhelms others around him. But at the same time, it's always a mindset that he wants to make not just the team better, but himself as a player successful on the pitch, create chances for everybody else. So yes, totally a roller coaster, but Chucky Lozano is one of the, as Tony said, one of the loved players, and I hope to see him again in 2026.
Darren, what's your impression about the future for Chucky with San Diego FC going forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, the season itself was probably a bit underwhelming, but I think also, we can all say honestly that part of the reason why you bring Irving Lozano to San Diego is for what he's going to do on the field, but also what he's going to do off the field, right? Not a big secret that this is a league that coveted this player for a while. And given our own geography and his popularity, there aren't many people that are going to bring thousands of people to the Rady Shell for an introduction. Respectfully, I don't know that Anders Dreyer would have drawn even a quarter of that. So only because we didn't know then what we know today. I think there has to be some resolution about and some honest conversations about how he fits in. I think the season itself with 9 goals and dealing with a bit of injury was underwhelming, certainly by comparison to Anders. We would have thought 19 goals, 19 assists. If you were to say, hey, who's the player that's going to do this before the season starts? Every one of us probably would have guessed that to be Irving Lozano. Mm-hmm. So, I think that there has to I don't know that there's any lingering resentment or ill will towards the situation that happened in Houston. But certainly, there are going to be some questions asked here in a short amount of time about what the future is going to look like for him. And do you give him another crack at this in season number 2? Is that something that's in the best interest of everybody involved? Or is there room in the conversation to explore some other opportunities?
Tony, any other players we should have our eyes on?
I mean, if you were talking about youth, right, then there's one, Manu Dua, in the back line, which is a player that was the number 1 selection in the Super Draft. And that's essentially what San Diego FC is going to try to go ahead and do, is get these young players, get them seen and get the best out of them and potentially give them looks either to Europe or other places. But in the meantime, you can go ahead and start developing them. And at the way that MLS works with the salary cap, that's a player that you can get the most bang for your buck for. And in order to go ahead and do that, you have to go ahead and play with a certain play style with it, which is the under 21 initiative, which is just, hey, we're going to trust younger players instead of bringing these high-value players in. And so a player like Manu Dua, who was able to not only adapt to a brand new position at center back, him being a traditional center defensive mid, but it honestly speaks to the trust that Mike Ibarras, once again, has in his players. And that's, you can look at almost any of these starting 11 players. It's the trust that they were able to earn for what in other places would be called a profesor, a profe, Mike Ibarras, which is literally the professor. And in this situation, he has a lot of young pupils who stepped up, Manu Dua being one of those players. In the midfield, man, if you want to talk about experience, Yepes Verskov. Like, that is a player that if you want to go ahead and really truly understand the sport of soccer, just look at the way that number 6 is able to move in the midfield, in the defense, and transitioning forward. That's a player who may not be scoring all the goals, who may not be the flashiest player, who may not have the coolest skills or the fastest sprints, but that is a general, and that is somebody who understands the game of soccer in a 4D chess situation and is able to make quick reactions and amazing, impressive saves when you just look at the simplicity that he's able to go ahead and have and bring calm as a captain as well. It's incredible to go ahead and do that. So those are 2 for me that were some of my favorite this season.
Looking at the calendar, one thing that's striking, the season just ended for San Diego FC, but the next season is right around the corner. I think the first regular season game for them is in February, right, Hector? I mean, how are you looking at the offseason, and what do you have your eyes on for how different this team might look come 2026?
Well, I'm expecting it the nucleus. I'm still expecting that Chucky Lozano will be back some way, somehow, that the rumors he's going to go to Chivas or to GMX is not going to happen. But, hopefully somebody that I would like to mention as well, throw out there, Corey Baird. where did this guy come from? An amazing player, creating some great passes for his teammates in openings. But in terms of the season itself, I expect the nucleus to be pretty much the same. Anders Dreyer, obviously, and I think Pellegrino will be back. And the peace of mind of having somebody like Pablo Cisniega, even though it ended horribly with Vancouver, everything happened. All the bounces went against San Diego FC. It was Murphy's Law at that point in the first half, but I think he stood out well, filling in for CJ Dos Santos. And like you said, it's going to be here before we know it. I think MLS and Liga MX, that's one of the things they have in common. They don't give the players a lot of breaks in between. So once the season ends, you got to start getting ready. The GMs and the front office have to start making some quick choices as to who's going to be back. But in terms of the basic, fundamental, backline, and the backline's young, as everybody's saying, but the nucleus of the team itself, I think, will pretty much be the same.
So as we kind of get to wrapping up here, I want to zoom out and just kind of reflect on your thoughts of the season. And Darren, you've been covering San Diego sports for a long time, long before San Diego FC or even the Wave, hit the shores here. How do you approach covering soccer differently from other sports you covered, whether in the past, the NFL or the Padres, for example?
It's a great question. And it's something that Tony and I talk about a lot, which is you obviously want to cater to an audience that knows how to speak the language of soccer. But you also realize that there's a lot of people who are learning. And you maybe have to slow things down a little bit and explain some of the things in ways that you wouldn't do it if you were talking about baseball or if you were talking about the NFL when the Chargers were still here. You would just automatically think people know what you're talking about. So, I do feel like there's such a willingness to learn. People that have had their first exposure to professional soccer, Major League Soccer this past season. I get a lot of questions, that I think a dyed-in-the-wool longtime soccer fan would consider remedial. But I think that there's a way to address everybody, no matter what it is that their level might be when it comes to the sport. So, it's different. And, I think you want to be inclusive. I think that you want to make sure that if somebody doesn't understand even something as basic as, wait, what, 3 points and 2 points? And you want to make sure that everybody can feel involved. This is going to be a learning process still for quite a while. We have a great soccer culture. We have a great soccer IQ here in this region, not just in San Diego, but on both sides of the border. And those people are on it. We all know this. But, it is also growing. And I think it's going to be like rocket fuel here over the next couple of months with the World Cup coming through next summer and a season number 2. Now people have an appetite for it. So it is a little bit different, but I think San Diego sports fans are pretty savvy, and I think that they'll get up to speed pretty quickly here if things continue in the direction that they've been picking up in 2025.
Yeah, you mentioned the World Cup. The draw was just announced earlier this morning, and the United States is actually going to play a match in Los Angeles. I think it's June 25th, so something to watch there for sure. Tony, we got Hector's reflections of what he's looking forward to next season. What about you? What are you looking for?
I'm looking for the sustainability aspect of this project. It's a very ambitious project since the get-go. They promised to have an academy up and running, facilities up and running, and over in Singing Hills, it's an impressive complex that they have designated to soccer, and just the development that this is really going to go ahead and bring year 2. I'm very curious in the interest that it's going to bring and how long the people are going to stay, right? San Diego fans, that's always been the criticism. Well, are they really fair weather fans, or are they going to be here every single day? So off pitch, that's what I'm looking for. On the pitch, I'm looking forward to see more international looks for some of these players in terms of international games. We have the Conca Champions, which is a separate international tournament coming up with a draw, and we're going to find out where San Diego is going to play. They might go to Panama and play. They might go down to Mexico and play some of these matches. So these are aspects for a new club that are very interesting to see in the little wrinkles that's going to present, whether it's we need more players. We need more players to go ahead and have experience in these types of moments. You need a certain, archetype of player to play in this sort of weather. But at the end of the day, it's going to be very interesting to see the development of year 2 of San Diego FC's style of play. Will they learn from their mistakes? Will they able to go ahead and grow? Or are they just going to stick to that same blueprint that they've been presenting of Right to Dream and not really divert from it? And that's really going to be whether Mikey Varas decides to acclimate a little bit more or divert from that style with the teams and players that he has. It's year one was a lot of you go to war with the army that you have, not the army that you want. And as they grow, they're going to start being a little bit more intentional about which players are here.
Well, we appreciate you all breaking down this season. Next time, hopefully, we can talk more about all the things that are happening. We didn't even get into San Diego Wave FC and their prospects for next season. I've been speaking with Darren Smith. He's one of the radio voices for San Diego FC and host of the Section 1904 podcast. Also, Tony Sanchez has been here. He's founder of Diego.Futbol. And finally, Hector Trujillo. He is a soccer writer in San Diego with El Latino and Times of San Diego. I want to thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate you.
Gracias.
Up next, UC San Diego is a leading institution in STEM field. So why are so many of its students struggling in math? That's ahead on Roundtable. Welcome back. You're listening to KPBS Roundtable. I'm Andrew Bracken. Remedial math is on the rise at UC San Diego. That's according to a new report out of the university, and it's raised concerns not just in San Diego, but across the country about academic preparedness and the future of STEM education. KPBS reporter Jacob Aere covered the story, and he joins me now. Hey, Jacob.
Andrew, thank you for having me on.
Welcome
I appreciate
back.
being here.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you. So set the scene for us. What did the university find out about students' math skills and where they are right now?
Yeah, so all of this information is coming from a report. This is a pretty expansive report, over 50 pages in length. It dove into a wide range of subjects, but this really highlighted the need for math help here. It was saying that, back in 2020, there was about 1 in 200 students who needed remedial math help. This is for courses, think in high school, like Algebra 1, Algebra 2, maybe geometry. Now, that number this last year is about 1 in 8 students. So this is a huge jump.
That really kind of struck me. It's just how significant that increase is. So let's talk more about what we know, why students are coming in so unprepared. I mean, obviously, COVID would be kind of the first thing that pops into my head, but tell us what they're saying.
Yeah, according to the report, of course, COVID is one thing. And when you think about COVID, there was remote learning, and then some of the other kind of ripple effects it might have had. So things like grade inflation, maybe teachers were a bit more lenient during that time because of the remote learning. Another big point that this report hit on was the elimination of standardized testing. So ACT and SAT are no longer considered, in the admissions process for the UC system. They said that was, at least according to them, one of the reasons for this. And then the last one is the expansion of admissions from under-resourced high schools. And this does tie back to the pandemic again, because you think about schools that maybe were hit hardest from the pandemic, whether it's, teacher turnover, whether it's maybe less access during remote learning. And it was students from those schools who suffered the greatest during the pandemic. So that was another reason that they listed.
So, you mentioned remote education, going to COVID. Another piece of that is just like how technology in education has shifted. And obviously, artificial intelligence is playing a role in that. What did they say about AI and its potential impact in what they're seeing in this increase in need for remedial math?
Yeah, it was interesting. Artificial intelligence wasn't directly mentioned in the report itself, which kind of actually struck me in a way. It was something that wasn't included. And I even did ask Ronatosh, the professor, Akos Ronatosh, about this. And he said, maybe in other subjects, this is something that you could potentially see more direct line to, whether that's writing, these kinds of things. But yet, even though he said that, when I was speaking with other people, maybe that it was something that they were talking about. I talked to the student body president, William Simpson, and he said, whether or not it's as easy to maybe get answers on math questions, it's the simple fact that you can turn to it. So, hey, whether it's ChatGPT or something similar, can you help me help solve this problem? So maybe it's just that reliance and the lack of a challenge that it creates when you're turning to AI.
So UCSD, they kind of say they're ahead of other schools in identifying the need for this remedial math. Why are they, ahead from where maybe other universities are in this?
Yeah, well, there's a couple reasons. For those who live here in San Diego, UC San Diego is known as a very strong school for STEM education, science, technology, engineering, math. They have a very robust engineering program. Their life sciences are very good. They also have, just strengths overall in the sciences. So that's one reason they're math focused. Those fields require math. That's
so
one.
This issue kind of jumped out to them. Maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then the other one is that they have their own math placement tests that UCSD itself kind of created, whereas some of the other schools are more reliant on standardized math testing. That goes across, whether it's the UC system or even more broadly. So UC San Diego might have a more rigorous math placement test. So the combination of that, with all these STEM-related majors that these students are applying for, they said it just kind of culminated in this situation where they have all these students that are now not qualifying for college-level math.
And this isn't really just a potential math problem, right? I mean, the report also found shortcomings in other skills around reading and writing. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, yes and no. I do want to reiterate, this report really did focus on the urgent need to address the math-specific situation. It did look into other, shortcomings for academic preparedness in things like reading and writing, but a lot of that data kind of fluctuated over the last decade or so. So while they said there needs to be more research done and some of the admissions process should be changed regarding reading and writing, they really were focusing on the fact that there was this lack of math, and that's why I delved into that in my story specifically.
So, I guess, the big question here is, what are they going to do about this issue? How is UCSD approaching this to improve it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of recommendations, actually, whether it's, system-wide when we were talking about other things like writing and reading, or there's specific recommendations for how to fix this math problem. Right now, like just to paint the picture, there's about 900 students in these remedial math courses, whereas in the past, you maybe had somewhere between maybe a couple dozen up to 100. This is, up to 2020. So the numbers really have exploded. So the report specifically for fixing the math problem, they said they want to change how they assess math preparedness and admissions. So maybe looking at a math-specific GPA, these kinds of things. Revisiting math requirements for certain majors, whether psychology is a Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science. And how students are applying for each of those differently. And then just conducting the actual math placement exam, that one that we had talked about earlier in the summer. They're trying to set this June 1st deadline. So those are some of the changes specifically for the math. And then overall, they're petitioning to the UC Board of Regents to bring back standardized testing. And they're also hoping to look into this high school grade inflation more broadly.
You also spoke to an outside expert about the long-term problems that this could pose. How might that impact students who are planning, a career in STEM?
Right. Yeah, Daniel Reinholz, who teaches math here and he studies math education, he had told me that, there's this intimidation factor that can sometimes happen, particularly in the U.S. Maybe someone says, oh, you're a math person, you're not. And he's like, that's the wrong approach to this all. So this can start from a young age. And then, of course, we've talked about reasons this has gone maybe exacerbated at the college level, as we've seen here at UC San Diego. He was saying that, when students come in to college needing remedial math, it can really set them behind. There's a lot of data that shows students who need remedial math, again, high school level, algebra 1, 2, or geometry, these folks have much, much lower rates of graduating from college itself. So then, if you can't get the degree, maybe the job won't be lined up in the future, these kinds of things. So his big suggestion was we need to fix the K through 12 aspect of this, make it more approachable, make it more fun, relevant for students, and then just not have this kind of black and white, you're a math student, you're not a math student approach. Whereas everyone can kind of, what he said was that, everyone can do math if you put in enough effort. And he really wanted to emphasize that.
This story has gotten a lot of attention, a lot of nationally, I've seen lots of stories on it, heard some interviews. I'm just curious, what have you been observing? What's the response been to your story?
Yeah.
Because it does seem like it's kind of captured, something in folks.
Right. And what I was hoping to do with this story was really show on a local level, kind of diving deeper into not just looking at the report, but actually talking to some of the voices, whether it's students themselves, in the case of William Simpson, or one of the voices behind why the report was made in Akosh Ronotosh, about, what this actually means. And I've gotten some feedback. This is a very hot topic issue. There's been a lot of people saying, our students aren't ready. This is terrible. This is a reflection of bad policy, these kinds of things. But at the end of the day, what Rona Tosh was really stressing is, yes, this is happening at UC San Diego. But he said, quote, we could be the canary in the coal mine, meaning other UCs might be seeing this issue. There's national downward trends in math abilities at the 8th and 12th grade level. So he's saying, while we're one of the first to see it, because we have this placement test, this might be a bigger issue that needs to be looked at.
So, a real local story here, but with much, greater national
potentially, yes.
As well, yeah.
Potentially, yes.
Well, it's a great story. I've been speaking with KPBS reporter Jacob Aere. I want to appreciate you, telling us more about it. You can read his full story at kpbs.org. Jacob, thanks.
Thanks for having me.
That'll do it for our show today. Thanks so much for listening to KPBS Roundtable. You can always listen to our show anytime as a podcast. Roundtable's technical producer this week was Brandon Trufa. The show was produced by Ashley Rush and Juliana Domingo. Brooke Ruth is Roundtable's senior producer. Quinn Owen is supervising audio producer. I'm your host, Andrew Bracken. Thanks again for listening and have a great weekend.
KPBS On Demand is supported by San Diego Congregations of the United Church of Christ, a community where Christmas is the story of a love greater than all that makes us despair. Learn more at SanDiegoUCC.org.